Hi there. You often get talk of why the four Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, are different. They say different things, and a lot of naysayers will say, well, they don't agree with each other, and they're not accurate, and they contradict each other, so it can't be true. I'm going to tell you a story. I made this story up. It's a parable of mine. And we're going to say there was a parade in town, a large parade, and there were marching bands and floats and things going down the parade. On the sidewalk, there are standing four people. Okay, there is a fisherman standing there watching the parade, and there's a doctor standing there watching the parade. Okay, and there's a pastor standing there watching the parade. And who else shall we say? Let me see. We have a fisherman. We have a pastor. We have a doctor, and an accountant. We have an accountant watching the parade. And this particular float goes by, a large float. And each of the four men standing there, the doctor, the fisherman, the accountant, and the pastor, are asked to write an account of this float and describe this float that is all going down the parade. Okay? Well, let's start with the fisherman. He says, "What did you see?" "Well, I saw this Ford F-350 white, big truck with dually tires. It was pulling a Chris Craft boat trailer, with 3-axle trailer with 3 wheels and automatic brakes. A real nice trailer that had a fifth wheel that hooked way up in the center of the bed there. And on this trailer was a stage I had set up that stood about 4 feet high, off the trailer, so it was like 5 feet up there. It was covered with red fabric. And on top of that stage, in the front, there were children there. They had yellow hats on, and they were singing. Behind them was a man dressed as Santa Claus, sitting in a large chair, waving at people, smiling with his big white beard. And behind him was a small house, painted brown. The roof had what looked like snow on it, with a little smoke coming from the chimney. And that's what I saw. Okay. So let's next ask the doctor what he saw. Doctor said, "Well, I saw a truck pulling a trailer with a large stage on it. It was covered with red fabric burlap. It had gold garland draped along the bottom of the stage, and on top of the stage there was standing a bunch of kids. They had red shirts on, green vests, and yellow hats, and they were singing 'Joy to the World.' Okay, and behind them was a man dressed in a red suit with a white beard, sitting in a big chair. The chair was green, and it went up over his head, and he was waving it at people as the float drove by. And behind him there was a house dressed up to look like a gingerbread house. I mean, it was brown, it was painted, it had decorations on it, and it had snow on the roof was made out of cotton, and then there was a little chimney with fake smoke coming out of it." And that's what I saw. Okay. Now, let's ask the accountant what he saw. Okay, accountant says, "I saw a big white truck pulling a boat trailer, and on that boat trailer there was a big stage built, 4 or 5 foot tall, covered with red fabric, and had gold garland on it, and little stars were stuck onto the red fabric. And on top of that, I saw 8 kids, and the 8 kids were wearing bright colored clothes, with yellow hats. And they had different shoes on. One of them had red shoes, one of them had white shoes, one had black Converse All-Stars, and the other one had some like bright green, Air Jordans or something. They were singing 'Joy to the World,' and behind them was sitting a man dressed as Santa Claus in a big green chair, and he had white trim on his red suit, and he had a gold fur collar on the coat, and the fur collar had black spots on it, signifying soot or something. And then he wore the hat with the white trim, also had black spots on it. He was waving with his right hand at kids as he went by. And behind him was a house built out of wood, looked like it built out of wood, painted to look like gingerbread, and it had white trim on it, 2 little windows with wreaths on it, and a doorway, signifying this was Santa's house at the North Pole, and there was a chimney, and there was fake smoke coming out of it. Okay, and that's what I saw. Well, as I said, Pastor, what he saw, the pastor said, well, I saw a truck and a trailer with a big stage in red, covered with red, and it had garland on it and little stars. And there was a bunch of kids up there dressed in festive clothing. They wore green vests and had yellow hats on. They were singing Joy to the World, and it signified his helpers, Santa's helpers, and behind them sat Santa in a big chair, with the Santa suit on and the white beard, and he was wearing wire frame glasses pulled down over his nose like this, and he was waving at people with his hand. And behind him was a house signifying his house at the North Pole, and it was cold up there, so they covered it with fake snow, and the roof had fake snow on it, and there was trim along the sides, and the 2 windows in the front, were lit from behind with lights, and it had fake snow on the windowsills, and it was all very festive, seasonal, singing songs as it traveled by. Okay, that's what the 4 people saw. Did they tell different stories? Yeah, they did. Were any of them wrong? No, that's what they saw. You asked a fisherman what he saw, and a doctor what he saw, an accountant what he saw, and a pastor what he saw. They see different things of the same parade float going down the road there. If you take all these stories and put all these stories together, you will have a complete story of that float. Everything, and most details will be there. Will every detail be there? No, they won't all be there. But you get a complete story. That's the way the Gospels are. The Gospel was written by a fisherman, a doctor, an accountant, and a pastor. Okay, I saw different things. Were they all God-inspired? Absolutely. It's what they saw. Different people see different things. You need different angles to get a complete story. So the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, are true Gospels, true stories. Everything's in there that happened. Different people saw different things, and they were written years apart, okay? 40 years, 50 years, 60 years apart, remembering what they saw. Now if you ask these 4, this fisherman, the doctor, the accountant, the pastor, you wait 10 years and ask them to describe that float, they may describe something different, but the basic details will still be there. That's how the Gospels are. They're meant to be taken all together to get a complete story of Jesus' life. Don't let people tell you they're inconsistent or they don't match each other, because they're not supposed to. Okay? And Jesus specifically chose people from different walks of life to see things differently. So remember that. And anybody tries to argue about the Gospels, even today, I've read stories of when there's a horrible crime committed, they'll call the detective on the phone, the cops on the scene, say, "Hi, a crime was just committed. We need you down here to investigate." And the first thing that investigator will say is, separate the witnesses, isolate them all. I don't want them talking amongst each other, because if they do, they're gonna get their story straight and get everything together. If you separate them, each one's going to tell a different story of what they saw, and then the investigator can put those stories together to get a complete picture. I mean, somebody was standing over here, somebody was on the other side of the street, and somebody was over here. They saw different things of the same. It's important to get different sides of every story to put your, if you're investigating the Gospels, to get your complete story together. So study them all together and compare them. Luke in the Gospel of Luke said, he saw one of the apostles cut off somebody's ear in the gang, one of the lead slaves, and Jesus put it back on and healed him. The other ones didn't mention that. Did that not happen? Of course it happened. The other ones didn't see it. They didn't notice. It wasn't important to them. It was important to Luke because he's a doctor and he saw that. And there's stuff like that all over. So just remember, when you're studying the Gospels, they're true Gospels. They're true accounts of Jesus' life, and everything they said happened. But different people see things differently, and you need it all to get a complete story. So, get the complete story. So, that's my story of the Gospels, and what people might say, and how you can argue back. Have a good day.